Recently, the Palm Springs Kiwanis Club had another great speaker. Let's listen in.
I am the station administration sergeant. It's kind of like the city manager, it's a cruise ship, it's the hotel director. It's pretty much everything you can think of that goes on behind the scenes of law enforcement inside of a large building. That's what I do. I take care of. This morning I had an officer come back to work after being injured, and she's never worked this particular station. She was transferred, so I had to do the paperwork. I had to give her a tour of the office. And then, unannounced, a brand new reserve deputy who was just sworn in Christmas Eve by the sheriff to be a reserve sheriff's deputy showed up, and then I had to head this way, and so anything can happen. I mean, if the washing machine breaks, they call me. We have a washer and dryer, and a lot of deputies go, "What do you need a washer and dryer for?" Well, we have trustees. Anybody know what a trustee is? A trustee is somebody that instead of doing their time in the county jail, they do it like in a work release program. And so we have trustees that wash our patrol cars. And washing those cars requires a towel, which requires it to get dirty. It needs to be clean. And so we need the wash machine for that. So anything that goes on at that station, I'm the one that's going to be in charge of it. My captain, first let me tell you a little bit about our station. We are on Gerald Ford Drive in Palm Desert, just east of Monterey. We have a sister station in Thermal, located by the airport. Our stations are very similar in size. They were both built within the last 5 years. Palm Desert Station has approximately 200 officers, employees that work out of that station. Thermal is slightly less. They probably have 175. But believe it or not, I oversee a force of approximately 100 volunteers. And so my boss's boss, the captain of our station, asked that maybe the Kiwanis would be interested in knowing what our volunteer force does. And so we have volunteers that start at the age of 14 who are police explorers. They can do that until they are, I believe, 21. And some of them move on to law enforcement, some don't. I have a majority of my volunteers are out in the different communities that the sheriff oversees. We have the outskirts of Desert Hot Springs. We have Mission Lakes Country Club. You guys know where that's at? Yes. It's on the east side there. They are a very large force of about 35 volunteers that patrol their streets, and very, very successful, just very well run. They've been in existence now for 3 years. I have Desert Edge, which is between Desert Hot Springs and Sky Valley, a very small area that has 26 mobile home parks. So we started up a volunteer force there. They patrol the streets, and they're doing well. We also have a Citizens on Patrol group in the Tri-Palm Estates, which is Thousand Palms there at Monterey and I-10. At the station level, I have a force of about 15 volunteers. And some of these volunteers are college students who only volunteer during the summer. I have others. I have one, I think my oldest volunteer, I think he's about 87 years old. And he's been a volunteer for about 25 years. He comes in not quite every day, but I'm guessing 3 or 4 days a week, and he sits at the computer and he does data entry for us. Very, very valuable. I have an 83-year-old who has opted to wear a uniform. If you didn't know any better, you would think he was a sheriff's deputy. And so the reason he wears a uniform, because he does so many different tasks for us, not at the station level so much, but he drives patrol cars for us to our garage for repairs in Indio. He'll take cars for us to Riverside. He'll pick up stuff in Riverside, bring it back. He's a courier. He's kind of a jack of all trades. Whatever needs to be done, and if he's available, he'll do it for us. And when he goes into these other buildings or these other sheriff's facilities or police departments, it's kind of nice for him. He doesn't have to whip out his ID card and they have to sit there and look at it. He walks in the uniform and he immediately, gets that respect that he deserves. I'm the most proud, probably, of our about 18-member search and rescue team. Any of you not live in Palm Springs but live in the other areas? Cathedral City. We get a lot of missing, lost hikers. The city of Palm Springs has their own force. I think it's both professional and volunteers, and they do, obviously, they have the canyons and so forth here. The Sheriff's Department, they wear the bright orange shirts, and they have sheriff's vehicles that are equipped especially for the search and rescue. They have the 4x4s. And they generally don't quite look like a sheriff's patrol car, but they may have some of the same things. They have the star and so forth. They are what's called is DSAR. DSSAR. It's the Desert Sheriff Search and Rescue. They are an invaluable team. They're all volunteer. Uniforms are provided for them. The vehicles are provided for them. Gas provided for them. But everything else they provide on their own. All the personal equipment that they need to go up into the to the hills or at the top of the tram or out towards Blythe, all that equipment that they're using is all personally purchased by themselves. They meet once a month. They train once a month. In addition to the meeting day and a training day, they will generally also take one day of the weekend and they'll do a hike, just like a fun hike to keep them their skills up. They'll just a very, very enthusiastic group to work with, and I'm proud to be associated with them. So that pretty much covers the volunteers that we have. Anybody have any questions?
Dan?
Yeah.
Tell them how long you've been in uniform.
I started late. And I was kind of honored, and I feel like a kid. I really do. I feel like I'm still 28. And I'm sure many of you...
You're a kid. Look around.
I'm sure I'm not the youngest.
You're too young to join this club.
But tomorrow, today's a very special day. It's my youngest daughter's birthday. She's 33, and then tomorrow is my 30th anniversary as a peace officer. I started my career with the city of Coachella. That was back when it was its own police department. It currently is serviced by the Sheriff's Department, which brings up a point that I get asked this a lot from the public, and so maybe some of you are not familiar with it also. Does everybody here know the difference between a police officer and a sheriff's deputy?
No.
Who lives in Rancho Mirage, Palm Desert, or Indian Wells, La Quinta? Anybody live in any of those communities? So you all live either in Palm Springs or Cathedral City or 29 Palms?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm in the Mid-Valley. And in the Mid-Valley, we have the three cities: Rancho Mirage, Palm Desert, Indian Wells. La Quinta and Coachella also fall into this group. In general, the sheriff is the law enforcement for each county in general, at least in California. So for the county of Riverside, the sheriff is responsible for the jails and the courts. Our sheriff is not quite the same as all sheriffs. There's 58 counties in California. So 57 other counties, not all of them share this next one. He is also the coroner. So we're all one, under one roof, instead of having two different entities. So with that in mind, and then with knowing that the sheriff does the unincorporated areas, the difference between us and, say, the Highway Patrol is the Highway Patrol is a state agency. We're a county agency. Highway Patrol covers unincorporated roadways. So any road in the city of Palm Springs, City of Palm Springs Police handles that. If it's on the outskirts, maybe, I know the roads have changed a little bit. 111 coming off of Interstate 10 isn't part of that unincorporated.
Yeah.
So the CHP would cover that area. Once they hit the city limits, Palm Springs Police picks it up. So the sheriff, in their areas that we cover unincorporated areas. We don't cover cities. They get flagged down, it's a CHP, and it's a crime going on. Hey, that guy, he's still in that car over there. The CHP can step in there, and he's not going to stand by and wait for the sheriff to show up. And vice versa. If we have a traffic collision, right, if we come across a traffic collision, we're going to go out and take care of the needs, and then for a report, the Highway Patrol would come in to do the report. And unfortunately, we have to sit and wait for somebody, and you've already been waiting. You called 911, so the police or the sheriff shows up, and actually it's a CHP area, so now you got to wait longer for them. And so unfortunately, sometimes that's the way it happens. Now, getting into the contract cities. If you are in a city, the sheriff does not give you a sheriff's deputy for your patrol for crime. Okay? The only way that you get a sheriff's deputy is if you a city hires the sheriff. And so that's what many cities throughout California do. LA County Sheriff does that a lot. LA County Sheriff covers parts of Long Beach, Hollywood. The reason that they do it, it's money. It is much cheaper to have the sheriff do your services. I'm not trying to have the city of Palm Springs have the sheriff come in, but if Palm Springs were to do away with their own police department and hire the sheriff, they would probably have millions of extra dollars every year. Okay? Most people don't want to do that in a city. It's happened with DHS. They don't want to do that because they like to have the control, the closeness with everybody that's there. You don't have that same closeness with the sheriff. The sheriff's office is in Riverside. You do have lieutenants that from the sheriff that would become your chief. So each of those contract cities have a lieutenant. And then the captain of our station is also the figurehead police chief. And so any concerns that you have, you can voice them, but it's not like having your own department, because the city manager can say, hey, you're the police chief here, I'm the city manager, and we're the city council, we want you to do that, and so you go out and do it. Well, I don't know the date, it was probably back in the early 90s, but the marshal's office dissolved, and I don't know the whole story there, because that's just when I was starting my career. But the marshal's office used to run the courts, and they used to have bailiffs. We don't have bailiffs anymore, unless, of course, it's somebody who used to be a bailiff and is still working for us. I think those are far and few between. So everybody that's in the courtroom now is a deputy sheriff. Okay, and it gets a little confusing because the courts are maintained by the state. So any overtime or any expense that goes on in a courthouse, the sheriff doesn't have to pay that. The state budget's paying that. You have a question, Jay?
I do. The cities that contract with you, Rancho Mirage Desert, the Palm Desert, La Quinta, do they have separate stations? They have a sheriff's station only, they think, because the cars say police on it, but they're sheriff's deputies, right?
Right. So
Do they go somewhere else or report somewhere, or do they go to where you are?
yes and no.
That's a good answer. Thank you.
Right to the point. In Palm Desert, there used to be an actual storefront at the mall. That was a substation to a substation. Okay, in La Quinta, La Quinta has a room like this at City Hall for the deputies, but the deputies only go to these substations to use the phone, maybe to use a computer, to write a report and to get out of the heat or something, instead of writing it in their car. It's kind of like it's like a pit stop area for them. They don't normally hang out there. You never know if there's one going to be there or not. Our station is located on Gerald Ford, and the one in Thermal is on Airport Boulevard. That's where everybody is stationed, and they go from there. Okay. Back in the 80s, there was no sheriff station in Palm Desert. It was all out of Indio. And so you go to Indio, and you get your gear, and you head out. You head out to, back then we had Cathedral City was unincorporated. Desert Hot Springs was unincorporated. We head out to those areas, and sheriff's deputies patrolled those areas. But once they become incorporated, they have to decide, what do they want to do? They want the sheriff, they want the police. Okay? The cities that contract with the sheriff, they save their money mostly on liability. Say you're in the city of Palm Desert and you need a new police officer. The sheriff knows they need to fill a slot. The sheriff hires them. The sheriff trains them. The sheriff takes liability for them. So if you see a sheriff's car in Palm Desert, it means one of two things. Either it's a supervisor who drives a sheriff's car, or it's a police officer who had to drive a sheriff's car because the sheriff's car was in the shop and the Palm Desert car wasn't available. The only difference is the patch they put on and the decal on the door. The badge is the same. We're all sheriff's deputies. But let's just say, heaven forbid, deputy is driving down the road, looks to the left, and somebody pulls out in front of them, they crash, somebody gets hurt or somebody gets killed. Those people go, oh my gosh, I can't believe that deputy just hit me, or just hit my family member. And what does everybody in California want to do? Sue. Okay? The city of Palm Desert has no worries. All that liability rests on the county of Riverside. So they come after the county of Riverside, not the city of Palm Desert. That could mean millions of dollars a year. Okay? There's another business deal that we do all the time, which is, I'm embarrassed to say it, but this is just the way it is. And I explained this to an employee this morning. Let's just say a sheriff deputy goes out and he's enforcing the law. He sees a suspect. He goes to arrest. There's a scuffle. Somebody gets hurt. Okay? No matter how minor or how major it is, that's a big, big deal with us. A supervisor has got to respond out there. Somebody other than the deputy that went physical with the person has got to speak to that person and say, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? Didn't you realize that was a police officer that you just fought with? Somebody else is going to interview them. We're going to take photographs of you. We're going to take photographs of the officer. You know why?
Didn't give any allegations.
Lawsuits.
Sure, but for what reason?
Police brutality.
What do I need a photograph for?
Shows you uniform.
What's that? Yes. Some people will say, I didn't know he was an officer. Well, what, you don't recognize that uniform, the star and the gun and the belt? But people will say that. I didn't recognize it. So we take a picture of that. The other reason we take pictures, because they're going to come back later and say, oh yeah, my arm's broke. Or whatever. And people, this is documented, people have done this. They've had an incident like this happen where nobody was injured. They go home and they go in the garage and they beat their head on the wall. And they take a picture and go get an attorney. They come to the sheriff, or they really don't. It's not to the sheriff. It's to the county of Riverside. The county, the sheriff is underneath that. And so they come to the county and they say, yeah, police brutality. That officer right there beat me up. I want something done, blah, 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 whatever. And so when it comes time to defend ourselves, okay, it's going to cost us some money. We're going to have to pay for an attorney or more attorneys. Sometimes, if it's minor, sometimes all that person is looking for is just to say I got you, to the county. And they want a little bit of money for it. And so sometimes, and this is the business transaction that I'm sad to say exists. If we know it's going to cost us, if this goes on for 6 months, it's going to cost us, $1.1 million. It makes a whole lot better sense, business sense, to give that person $20,000 if he'll just go away without admitting guilt. That happens every day, and it's not. And officers feel bad about it. They see these people winning these lawsuits, and it makes the officer feel like they did something wrong. And in most cases, it's not. It's only because it's a business transaction. It makes better sense to give them $20,000 than it does to give them $1 million, right? It's kind of like gangs. I have people that will move here and say, hey, do we have gang problem here? I say, well, of course we do. We have gang problem everywhere. Really? They don't see it. You don't see it as much here unless you see something in the paper or the news. And it's the same with that kind of mentality that we're seeing now on the news. I very rarely have seen any of that. And very rarely have I run across another police officer who is malicious and has done something bad or illegal. I mean, if I know what's happening out there. We see, the South Carolina guy where the officer is shooting the guy in the back as he's running. I can't come up with any possible way to make that officer look good. To me, there's no excuse. Okay? Did I answer your question?
Just mentioned you were introduced as sergeant, correct?
Pardon me?
You were introduced as sergeant.
Yes.
I know the position you're holding, but can you carry a gun?
Oh, I'm carrying a gun.
Oh, you are?
I'm carrying a gun. I don't go anywhere.
Okay.
I don't go swimming without my gun.
Okay.
And that's because I don't want to be a victim. Okay?
You don't have a gun?
Oh, I do. Yeah. It's a small one. It's only a 5-banger. You want me to give away a trade secret? It's right here. It's on my ankle. But it's small enough I can carry it in my pants pocket. Okay.
How about Blythe and north of Blythe? Does the sheriff's department or do you contract with the city?
We have our Colorado River Station, which covers Blythe. There's the city of Blythe, and they cover the city limits. And then there's a lot. I used to live in Blythe. There's a lot of unincorporated area in Blythe that they cover. And we also have a jail out in Blythe. Yeah, our officers in Blythe, they probably field a couple, maybe 3 officers on a busy shift. So they're, as far as their calls for service, not quite as much as you would find here in the valley. That's another thing. The unincorporated areas, the outskirts of Desert Hot Springs. We even have South Palm Canyon. Are you guys aware that part of that's county out there? So that's part of our coverage. Most of that are some of the very, very nice houses. And usually the only problem that we run across there is ringing alarms, audible alarms. And so we have an agreement with the Palm Springs Police Department that if it's just an audible alarm, there's no signs of break-in or anything like that, then they will respond to that and make sure it's okay. If it's anything more than that, they call us.
For more, go to KIWANISPalmSprings.org.